Welcome to the Low Carb USA podcast, where we seek to inspire you to help us build this community. I'm Doug Reynolds.
And this is Pam Devine.
So Frank Yoza is the founder of an organization called Ketone Aid, and they predominantly manufacture ketone esters. And we can probably talk about that separately at some other time, but very recently, he sent me a few samples of a new concept that he has of hard ketones. And I actually tried some, and it's actually pretty fascinating. But I think, Frank, welcome. And let's start out by just describing what these things are and what this is all about. And then we can talk about my experiences afterwards.
Great. Thanks for having me. So I started the company 4 or 5 years ago called Ketone Aid. And our main focus has been ketone ester. And we sell to 80% of the World Tour de France teams. And that's what this is right here. It's called KE4, 50% ketone ester. Really strong, doesn't taste good. Actually just had a sip and Doug saw me cringe a little bit. So this new company, we actually set up a new company. It's called Hard Ketones. Right here is the Selzer, and we can talk about, you haven't tried this one yet, the gin and tonic in a smaller can. And what it has, the main ingredient is R13-butanediol. And where that comes from is half of the ketone ester molecule. The ketone ester is beta-hydroxybutyrate, the R form, the bioavailable form, combined with R13-butanediol. When you consume it, it enters into the bloodstream as ketone ester, and it separates into two parts. The BHB goes immediately in your blood, so you can test your blood ketones. And the R13-butanediol goes through the liver, and then after it goes through the liver, it's about 80% of it converts to R beta-hydroxybutyrate. So you kind of have a fast release and a slow release. And I asked the scientists, and that's my connection to all of this, is Dr. Richard Veach. He was my wife's godfather who passed away a couple of years ago, and he was working on this for 20 to 40 years. And it's a great book, Ketones, the Fourth Fuel, if you want to see a history of his life. And I asked him, the ketone ester is very expensive to make. We manufacture it in the US. And I said, well, if the R13-butanediol converts in the liver, why don't you just drink that? It's a lot less expensive than having these two molecules that you got to spend all this time putting together. And I'll remember to this day, his exact answer was, the mice were stumbling, which basically meant the mice were drunk. And I had him elaborate, and R13-butanediol by itself is technically an alcohol. And because it was an alcohol, they kind of discarded it as, this isn't something that, because he was focused on therapeutic uses of the ketone ester and not, relaxing, having a good time and getting the buzz. It's all about, getting the buzz. If this didn't give you a buzz, might as well go buy a non-alcoholic drink. It'll cost you a lot less, because it's a little bit pricey right now. So then when I heard that, I actually went off. That's when I filed a patent. I was like, that sounds like a great idea. I think some people might want to be stumbling. And so let's discuss, the umbrella category called alcohol. Most people equate ethanol and alcohol. They think of it as one word, because everything that we consume that is alcohol to this date has been ethanol. But there are other alcohols. There's rubbing alcohol. There's stuff that you wouldn't consume that you would put on your hands or clean dishes. Those are all alcohol. So ethanol is in beer, vodka, wine. Everything you drink today is ethanol. This is a whole new classification that is not ethanol based. So what we're doing is not just adding ketones to ethanol and calling it a ketogenic alcohol. It is a whole new classification called R13-butanediol. So the main problem with ethanol is that ethanol converts in the liver to acetaldehyde. And that is what gives you the hangovers. That's the most toxic substance. And that's also what gives Asians, they give them 30% of them will get a red face from the acetaldehyde. Many people are allergic to it. And it also has many addictive qualities that want you just craving more and more of it, either the next morning or the next day. So ethanol converts to a toxin. If R13-butanediol was an alcohol that gave you a buzz and just converted to water, that would be amazing. That would just be, in a class of itself, because it doesn't have acetaldehyde. But this is actually one step more exciting than that, because it actually converts to beta-hydroxybutyrate. So drinking one can of this stuff which has 12.5 grams per serving, about 4%, will give you a little bit of a buzz and raise your blood ketones 1.5 to 2 millimolar based on your body weight. Now, let's not be confused. High ketones does not mean you're burning fat. And a lot of people get confused with that. They think, oh, I've got ketones in my blood, I'm burning fat. I'm just sitting back watching the Super Bowl and drinking this drink and I'm burning fat. It doesn't work that way. It's not real ketosis. All the competitors call their drinks, oh, drink this exogenous ketone and you're in ketosis in 15 minutes. It's misleading because the consumer hears fat burning, while hyper technically, they're defining ketosis as ketones in your blood. Okay, sure, but that's not what the consumer is thinking. They're thinking that they're burning fat. And I get emails all the time about weight loss and, can I have a cake and then eat this and be back in ketosis? No, it doesn't work that way. You'll gain weight if you actually do that too much. And for the most part, we don't, with the ketone ester, we don't advertise it for weight loss. It can be used to help you skip meals, but the skipping the meals is what's helping you lose weight, not the drink. So we started off with the Selzer version, and we've had 3 or 4 batches now, and we've been adjusting and tweaking based on customer feedback, how sweet we want it, and how much of the active ingredient. And the most recent batch, not the one that you got, but the most recent batch, we listened to people that thought that it was too sweet. So we actually backed off on the sweetness, maybe too much. So now we're actually going to send drinks with a packet of a stevia packet. So if you wanted to add a little bit more sweetness to it. And then we came out with our second drink, which is a G&T. So there's no gin in here, but it has the juniper and the tonic smell in it. And it actually tastes pretty good. And unlike the seltzer where we're trying to cover up the alcohol because it doesn't taste very good, the G&T, just the way that it works, it's low on the sweet side, but it's fine. You actually want to taste the alcohol and enjoy the juniper and the tonic, with this alcohol together. So any other questions, or are you going to jump straight into your experience?
Sure. So yeah, Frank, thanks. You sent me a couple of samples of this, and I actually struggled to find a time when it was going to work for me to try it out, because you said try it out before dinner to see if it affected your appetite or something like that, because that's one of the features of having excess or higher ketones in your blood is that it does seem to dampen the appetite as well.
Yeah, so we have told people that you might consider doing a reverse intermittent fasting. So instead of skipping breakfast and lunch, some people can have their breakfast and lunch and then take this after work and just maybe skip dinner
and skip dinner, basically. Yeah.
And that's one of the examples of how R1,3-butanediol is different than ethanol. Ethanol actually makes you more hungry. It makes you, that's why they want to serve it to you at the beginning of your meal, so you order more. Meanwhile, the R1,3-butanediol tends to fill people up. As far as feeling the buzz, we found that if you take it with the meal, you might be less hungry during the meal, but then you might not get the buzz. If you're fine with that, then that's fine. But just managing expectations, we find that being on an empty stomach, usually 1 can, people feel a relaxation sense. And then 2 cans, they feel more of a buzz, a tingling, a lightness feeling. But, we've had larger 250-pound men that said that half of a can, they felt it. Whereas, a few women who are lighter weight didn't feel it at 2 cans. But we did a poll on our website, and I think we found that 80% of people felt it at least with 2 cans. And so, yeah, you could use it to try to help skip dinner. And the funny thing is we're getting Oura Ring data back from people saying, hey, here's what 1 drink of ethanol did for me on my sleep, and my sleep score was 32. And here's, a couple of days later, 2 drinks of your drink, R13 is what we call it. And, the sleep score was 70, 75, just drastic difference. And even some people getting 20, 30 minutes more deep sleep than their baseline with no alcohol. So just getting actually better sleep while getting a little bit of the buzz. At some point people will realize, what's the point of drinking ethanol? There's just, why not switch over to this once we have enough variety of drinks? And ultimately we want to have a beer, but it's really hard to have a super low sugar and low carb beer. So we'll add that in and it'll be a ketogenic beer, but we can make anything. We can make mimosas. We can make, anything that's on the list that's being made with ethanol, just make a version with, R13 butane. Now, I think maybe red wine might be one of those things that might not be able to mimic because of the dynamics of red wine. People know the difference between a 5-year oak barrel and a 15-year oak barrel, like that nuance. I don't think we'll be able to copy, but maybe one day,
You never know. So I mean, I finally got around to sitting down and trying this, and I sat there with my Keto Mojo as well, because I was really interested to see how this all worked. So, and I was looking through my thing now, and I think it's just long enough that I did this that I can't recover the data on my little meter thing. But if I was running a little low, I tested and I was at about 2.1 ketones, right?
That's pretty high. That's higher.
Wow, for me, that's pretty low. I'm normally running up closer to 2. But anyway, I took a baseline and it was 2.1. No, did I say 2.1?
Yeah.
I'm lying. So it was 1.1. Okay. So I took a baseline and it was 1.1, which was low for me. And I'm not really sure why that was, but so then I drank one. And to be honest, I can't tell you that I felt a little bit more relaxed or anything like that, but I tested after another 30 minutes and my ketones were up to 1.7. And then I drank another one, and probably over about 15 minutes, I didn't just down the whole can.
Right, that's the difficulty.
I managed to drink it over about 15 minutes. And then about half an hour later, I tested it again, and I was up at 2.5, I think.
Yeah, so that's the tricky thing with this, is that the peak, if you were to take it as a shot, the peak is about 40 minutes later. But if you're taking a drink slowly over 15 minutes and then you miss that exact peak, you
never know exactly, right? So I was up at about 2.5.
Right. Yeah.
And I have to agree that at that point, if I thought about it, I would say, yeah, I mean, I'm maybe that's my mood's better. I think I felt like it was definitely having that effect on me. But then you'd sent me a few, and I actually had a third one. And
third one all at once, right? Third one that day, or
yeah, then a third one that so I had one. I waited 30 minutes or so, did a test, drank another one over 15 minutes, then waited 30 minutes after I'd finished that one, did a test, and then I drank a third one, also over about 15 minutes, and then did another test half an hour after that. And it was up, ketones were up over 3 point something.
Yeah.
So they definitely elevate ketones. And you mentioned it, and that's one of the pet peeves I have with a lot of the people that sell exogenous ketones, is that they sell ketosis. They say, oh, drink this thing and then you'll be into ketosis. And that is complete rubbish.
Yeah.
Because there's been none of the metabolic changes that actually what ketosis was. What happened with that is that Steve Finney defined what ketosis was. Like, okay, your ketones, if they have to be between 0.5 and 3.5 or something, but it was like, it's a marker. So he's determined that if you've gone through those metabolic changes, this is what your ketones are going to be in this range, right? Yeah. But it doesn't mean that if you go and inject yourself with the ketones and you're now sitting in that range, that you now have undergone all those metabolic changes.
Absolutely.
Right. So I have a huge problem with that. But at the same time, I do believe that there are some benefits to having elevated ketones in your bloodstream, right? And you're not in ketosis, but you do enjoy some benefits of elevating the ketones. So if someone's not in ketosis and they drink these things and they get elevated ketones, there may be some things that will be of benefit to them. And you mentioned appetite. That appetite suppression might be one of them, and that's a very individual thing as well.
Yeah, I would say that 80% of our customers are already ketogenic, but it was actually designed and invented for people that are not keto, because Dr. Veach thought that people the average consumer won't change their diet. So why fight that? Let's just give them ketones. And like you say, there are benefits of having ketones in your system outside of your body making them. And the history of this title, nutritional ketosis, was that these scientists that don't understand marketing just threw out that word haphazardly 5-10 years ago when describing exogenous ketones. And then the marketers latched onto it. And it's like, well, they called it nutritional ketosis. Like, why can't we? And now we're starting to shift. I'm starting to shift the phrasing to exogenous ketosis and endogenous ketosis.
Okay.
Because previously there were exogenous ketones about how you consume them, but then why not redefine the ketosis itself with endogenous and exogenous? And as far as how the consumers use the ketone ester, for sports performance, having that extra fuel in there. Some people use it for sleep. You said appetite suppression, but also brain fog. If your brain isn't getting sufficient fuel with glucose, you take the ketones and it bypasses that fuel source and fuels the brain. And some people feel it much more than others. When I take 10 or 15 mLs, I actually don't really notice that much of a difference. But then some other people will take 5 mLs and suddenly they're, the clouds are parting. So it's very unique to the individual.
Yeah, and I mean, even if you look at research into Parkinson's, there's been marked improvements just elevating for them. So them basically taking exogenous ketones and elevating ketones in their bloodstream has had. There's a lot of hope in terms of how that might help with Parkinson's.
Yeah,
but there are times when elevating your ketones, therapeutically even might be a good thing. But don't tell me that you're in ketosis because you're not.
Yeah. I think I'm the only company that actually says that, and everyone else,
Yeah, they sell it because that's, especially now, ketosis, is the buzzword these days, and so that can really misdirect people. So there's a couple of things that I was thinking about while I was drinking the third one. So first of all, I'm assuming that if you drank a bunch of these things and then you went and did a breathalyzer test, you wouldn't test.
Which kind of breathalyzer? There's a ketone breathalyzer test.
No, like a regular DUI breathalyzer.
Right.
So there's a little bit of concern from me there, where if people are abusing this, does that euphoria, does that continue to escalate as you drink more, so that at some point there is an issue with them driving impaired or something like that?
Absolutely. So we put on the can, do not drive while intoxicated. We require 21 and over signatures to buy it. Mm-hmm. And anything can be abused, even water, excess water. People die from marathons and they find out that it's excess water. Mm-hmm. But yeah, you'll have a buzz, and you should not drive. As far as the breath meter or the breathalyzer, it won't show up because the police officers are checking for ethanol.
Those
exactly. Machines are ethanol. This just has no ethanol, just straight up zero, even a blood test. But that won't stop you from driving under the influence. So if you take a hit of weed and you go drive and get into an accident or get pulled over, it's also going to show up as zero. So it's really just, if people are putting HTC in liquid form, where you're drinking cannabis. So so we also do say limit 3, because we don't want people to abuse it and use too much of it. But what we found was that unlike ethanol, where you drink a beer, you just feel inclined and you have these cravings for another one and another one, kind of like a bag of chips. Mm. This actually doesn't do that. This is the opposite. You drink 1 or 2 and you're actually kind of content. I did a podcast with Jimmy Moore, and his plan was to drink 3 after, I don't know if it was 1.5 or 2. I think it might've been 1.5. He had to stop. he was giddy and he was good. He was like, I don't need any more. And he just stopped. So we hope that people won't abuse it. And it's also the buzz is different. Maybe you can describe it, but many have said that it's cleaner, it's shorter lived. And it's not like a bar fight, angry drunk. It's more of a relaxed, like someone that's taking a Xanax, relaxation type buzz. So you're just not as inclined to just be revving up and getting more and more and more. And I also should point out, talking about when to take the ketone ester, that this drink is not, we don't sell it as a sports drink. So one might say, oh, I want to get my ketones up. And this drink does cost 50 to 60% less than our ketone ester on a cost per gram basis. So someone might say, hey, why not drink this, before my workout? And when we tested it on people, they'd get on the treadmill and they would see a couch and they'd be like, I'd rather be sitting out over there and just relaxing.
Well, they head for the couch.
The old focus was which products raise your blood ketones and dollar per ketone rise. But we're learning that it's so much more than just blood ketone levels, because different molecules will do different things and they'll enter the bloodstream differently. I had one person who had, for a multi-level marketing company selling ketone salts, had been using it for years, took one sip of the ketone ester and suddenly it hit them in the brain. And they're like, I've taken the salts for years and I got my levels up. So it's not that. So there's something different. So we wouldn't recommend this drink for, pre-workout. Now, post-workout, celebrating after a marathon instead of a beer, exponentially better.
Much better.
And I consider myself one of those people that, quote unquote, don't drink. Just, I'm getting too old where the benefits of one or two Corona it just destroys my sleep score. I just don't, feel good, but I will drink this. So I have even on Instagram, I don't drink, but I do drink R13 because it's just a different classification. When people say they don't drink, what they mean is I don't drink ethanol. Now we can have a discussion of whether or not, this works for you.
Right. The other question I had was, like, because I saw after each one that my ketone levels did keep increasing. Is there a point at which that would stop happening if I drank, you said that you tell people limit 3 and hopefully everyone sticks to that, but it's not going to happen. There are going to be people that will drink more, just even if they just want to see what happens. What happened if I drank 6? What, in terms of my ketone levels?
Yep, your ketone levels are going to keep on going up. So the peak is at 40 minutes if you were to take a straight shot, and then it starts going down. But one thing that's kind of interesting is people think that it stops working after 40 minutes. But after 40 minutes is when it starts working, because the ketones leave your blood and actually go to your
actually
system.
getting used. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So there have been other podcasts where they say, oh, the problem with ketone ester is after 40 minutes, they start going down. So you have to take it many times in the day. And they just are misunderstanding how ketones work. But yeah, your ketones will keep on going up. And, that's not suggested. The ideal range for mental clarity, for example, I would say would be between 2 and 4. I've done with the ketone ester a test on my eyesight where my baseline, just through diet, because I'm vegan and keto, my baseline was 1 or 2. I took the ketone ester and I went up to 6. And I took an eye exam when I was at the 1 or 2, and I got 20/10 or something, like the best the guy had seen. And then I came back and my eyes just couldn't focus. So there's, there'd be no reason for going up higher as far as getting more ketones and losing more weight. It definitely won't do that. But yeah, we hope that people will, limit their consumption, but anyone, might, take too much of it. And we just hope that they won't abuse it. And I hope that they don't have the desire to abuse it. And
yeah,
we've gotten that feedback
I think, and
as well. And it's expensive.
Yeah,
it's
when
expensive
we were
enough
talking
that,
offline, I think right in the beginning when you first sent it to me, and I kind of phoned you up and said, "What's this?" But one of the things I think during that discussion, I seem to remember you saying that even people with like alcoholic type problems with alcohol, obviously, had actually, and I'm certain that they were pretty nervous when they did, but they tried this and found that it first of all didn't trigger any kind of cravings, and maybe you can describe it more or better.
So we have there's some mice data from 30, 40 years ago, because initially this molecule was experimented on with humans. They were looking at it for like NASA performance fuel and stuff. And one of the lines said, if they can make this not taste this nasty and so expensive, it might actually one day become, a food staple that's actually in there. And that was when it was racemic. So it was not bioavailable, which means that only half of the molecule actually worked. So, and it tasted nasty. But in mice, it helps with the craving of alcohol withdrawals. And we found a woman, she's a biohacker nurse, super healthy, does ice baths. And her only vice was that she takes 2 glasses of wine every day after work because she feels like she has to relax. Later on, I found out that those 2 glasses were oversized glasses. And it was actually 1 bottle of wine every day. She didn't call herself, she knew that it was not ideal, but she didn't see it as a problem necessarily. And she took 2 cans of the R13. Well, she started off with 1 can. She said within 5 minutes, she said she felt like a Star Trek scan from the top of her head down to her toes. And this like craving and desire to crack open that bottle of wine that she's just accustomed to just went away for her. And 1 can was not enough, but she went to 2 cans and then immediately asked me to overnight and FedEx another 50 cans so she could, go the entire month. And sure enough, I checked on her 30 days later and she just had 2 cans, per day. And she's without cracking open the wine and having the desire for the wine. She said that when she would wake up in the morning, normally when she had an ice bath, she could see it in her face, just less inflammation and stuff. She said that it was like that every day. So it was almost as if the benefit of the ice bath was counteracting the ethanol. And if you remove the ethanol and either get rid of the ice bath or just have the ice bath and the 1,3, her health is substantially better. And I've talked to wellness centers and I said, do your customers drink alcohol? Because out of all the things you try to get them to do, the one thing, cutting out that 1 or 2 drinks every night, they could have a huge impact on their health if they can do that. Now, if they use the R13 to then transition off of ethanol and off of R13, then great. I mean, you can use it as a transition tool to try to get off of ethanol. And other people that we've got people that are between 6 months and 10 years recovering alcoholics. They brought it into their house. And this one lady, she said that her husband only let her bring it in because he's a scientist and understood, exactly what it was. She cracked open the drink, drank half of it, felt a little buzz and stopped. And she's like, Frank, if there was a 6-pack in my house and I took 1 sip of it, there's no way that 6-pack would not be gone. And I checked with her a month or 2 later and she said, yeah, she has 1 can every, 5 or 6 days. And it's just not been a problem for her. So yeah, it's really exciting to give people an alternative to something that's so toxic and, help with the cravings. People think that the craving is for the buzz. And I don't really think that it is the buzz craving.
I agree with you. It's a
chemical
thing, yeah.
visceral craving. And part of that also might be a sugar craving, because I know one person said that they went keto, low carb, but then they kept their wine. And I was like, well, that wine had a lot of sugar. Well, yeah, kind of. Like, so either a craving for the sugar itself or for, the ethanol. And like clockwork, 23 hours later, she would feel, I don't know if she would get shakes, but she would just feel this need and desire to unwind. And for her, this helped knock that out. And hopefully one day we'll have clinical trials that can kind of, prove this effect as well. But I think it can really help a lot of people.
Sounds like it, man. This is fascinating. I'm so glad that I actually didn't just chuck this away when you sent it to me and
it's
got hold
so
of you and
different.
actually tried this. It's been fascinating. And I'm,
how was the taste?
Sorry?
How was the taste? Because the ketone ester tastes bad. I'll just flat out admit that. And so people were worried about,
that I was worried too. In fact, that's probably one of the reasons that I didn't initially jump on it, was like, because I was scared it was going to taste like the ketone ester. The flavor is like lemon lime or something like that.
Raspberry lime, yeah.
And it was actually pretty decent. I was enjoying drinking it. It wasn't like I was, like you mentioned with the esters, like sometimes you just like, look, you're doing this for health reasons or whatever. So just like suck it down and stop complaining, But
We'll have to make sure to
this is
get
actually,
you
I mean,
this one.
and if you're going to be drinking it to try and get some kind of buzz as well, you want to be enjoying the drink as well, right?
Yeah.
And that brings you showed the G&T. You didn't even have that available when I was speaking to you previously. You sent me a little sample, and it's just I still didn't know what to do with it. So
you still have it?
yeah. So, but drink it just the same as that.
Oh, no, that one, what I sent you was for you to put it in 3 ounces of sparkling water. So grab 3 ounces of sparkling water,
Sparkling water, okay.
stir it up, and but by now I can probably already have one shipped to you by the time you get around to drinking that.
No, I'm happy to. I just didn't know quite what to do with it.
Yeah, sure.
I didn't want to ruin it, so I thought I'd wait until I speak to you before I actually.
Yeah, and also the drink we didn't mention has 0 sugar and 0 carbs. So we could have eaten, and no sucralose, none of the artificial flavorings. It would have been a lot easier to make it taste like a fruit punch or something. But we just stuck with monk fruit and stevia, and now we're actually phasing out the stevia and seeing if we can just do monk fruit. The latest batch was a little bit too unsweet. We went a little bit too far in the spectrum, but I think we'll settle upon something that's just minimally sweet, that is enjoyable to have that second and third sip and drink.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. So if people want to try this, how could they order some from you?
So for right now, it doesn't. Hard Ketones, if you go to hardketones.com, that goes to our Instagram page, and it's people, different images of people trying it. But we are selling it on the ketoneaid.com page, which is the sister company. And you can try, we actually let you order a single can or 2 single cans, one of the Selzer and then one of the G&T. And then we have 2 separate coupon codes. One would be low carb 15. That'd be for 15% off of any of the R13 drinks. And that would be up until June 2022. I have to put some sort of date on that, or just using the phrase low carb, and that'll give you free shipping on anything. So if you wanted some of the ketone ester or just wanted the ketone ester, there's 2 separate coupon codes there. So low carb or low carb.
The low carb one, does that last beyond June as well? Are they both up until June?
Yeah, absolutely. And people, I see the orders come in, they order 1 or 2 cans to try out, and then a week later I got an order for like 50 units, because that's the maximum that FedEx will ship. It was a 50-pound box, and they just get these huge quantities of them, and we have sold out a few times. So hopefully we're trying to grow the manufacturing bigger and bigger, so that each run is larger, so we can maintain inventory and hopefully come out with creative new products. The beer is what I've been spending the most time on. That's really, really tough to get low sugar and 0.0 ethanol, not this 0.5 stuff, but true 0.0.
Like literally 0 ethanol. Yeah. Okay, well, thanks very much. This was fascinating. I'm sure we'll probably do some follow-ups as well as you come out with more products, and maybe especially when you have the beer ready. I can do a sample of that, and we can do another one.
Absolutely.
This has been awesome, man. Thanks a lot.
All right. Thank you.
You've been listening to an episode of the Low Carb USA podcast. You can support us on Patreon at patreon.com/lowcarbusa.